Noun. An event that is not as exciting or popular as people thought it would be. That's the dictionary definition of a damp squib. Arguably the definition of Ipswich Town's transfer deadline day, but definitely not the definition of Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us, those of you who are in the chat. There are, perhaps understandably, a fair few of you in there, all with similar comments that I can see so far. A mixture of acceptance, disappointment, reluctant acceptance, frustration, etc. What I will ask you to do, please, as we tend to do in these situations, I think in the past maybe we've asked for a grading, an old school GCSE A-level grading. This time we'll just do it out of 10. If people want to give us a rating out of 10 as to Ipswich Town's performance in the transfer window, please do so, but put a little bit of workings in there if you will, and I shall pop them up as soon as I see them on the screen. We'll get round to chatting about them if we can as we spot them. Joe, the general consensus as we entered the transfer window was that we could really do with a centre forward, and as the January matches passed by and the performances certainly up front maybe continued a trend in the number 9 position, that consensus and requirement arguably grew. Joe, how are you feeling? If ever the Ipswich Town fan base needed someone to inject a little bit of positivity into what has been a potentially disappointing transfer deadline, it's Joe Fairs. What have you got to rouse the populace?
Well, I think it's frustrating, isn't it, that number 9 role, not having one in there, because it felt like we were one short at the start of the season. As on coming in, he'd only played in like the Spanish second tier, really didn't have an incredible record in that league. George Hurst, I think we all expected a bit more of him this season. I thought he was very good when he played in the Premier League last year. And I remember sitting on here and reading the comments saying, oh, George Hurst makes us play better than Liam Delap. We should give Hurst more game time than Delap because Delap's too selfish and Hurst is better than him for us. And he signed a big new contract. There was sort of the rumoured interest from, I think, Leeds and Burnley. But I think that was just maybe his agent to get a new contract, got a new contract, signed a number 9 shirt, scores his penalty in the opening day and tells us all that's what he does. And I think that's what we were expecting from him this season. I think we're all probably expecting sort of 15, 18 goals this season from him leading the line, but it's just not turned out to be the case. And with that, I think we needed someone to put a bit of pressure on him. And it doesn't look as though we've got that. Like, there's no confirmation of deal sheets going in. And I don't know. It feels like we're short there, doesn't it? It feels like we're one short, and we're going to rely on maybe sort of Chuba Akpom to help out in that 9 role. And I think, in fairness to Chuba, I thought he looked good when he came on at the weekend. Looked very sharp, probably the sharpest I've seen him. The last game he started for us as a 9 was against Oxford on New Year's Day, where he scored the winning goal. So I guess if he can do that, if he can start games and score a few goals, then all will be okay. But it does feel like we're one short there.
We're one short on February the 2nd, and we're arguably one short on whatever the date in September was. The September the 2nd. And as we're led to believe it, back in the August transfer window, when we had the initial inquiry into Ivan Azon, and we did our due diligence and we performed the medical, we then decided against it, but then found ourselves having to revisit it later on in that transfer window. We'll have a chat in a little while about what seems to be a bit of a blind spot, really, with regards to centre forward recruitment, especially given the circumstances and the timescales we were working on last year and where we found ourselves in the league and who we knew was leaving, etc. Anyway, let me get some points up on the screen. Bluey 5697 is giving it an 8 out of 10, a positive 8 out of 10. Not quite so positive from Uzzle, who has suggested a 3 out of 10. waiting for today to bid on Aziz. We shall come on to that in a second. Uzzle, no striker, they've pointed out. Jamie, good evening. 6.5. He's giving it out of 10. Saying the two guys we got in are solid players. I don't think there's any disagreement there that the recruitment we've done slightly further back down the pitch has been very solid. Greg's gone for an 8 out of 10 with regards to the two players that we've got. Neil's gone for a steady 6. Rich, thank you very much. 10 out of 10. Maybe not for the transfer window. Timothy has gone for a 7, as has Bargool, as has Amanda. Good evening to you. Lee's gone for a slightly more downbeat 4 out of 10. Tammy, 5 out of 10. Disappointing transfer window. I think it's obviously been clouded somewhat, Joe, hasn't it, by just that lack of what. Do you reckon at the beginning of the transfer window, if we had got, I was going to say Max Bygraves, no, Bob Monkhouse, no, Les Dennis, we'll bring it right up to date and go Les Dennis's family fortunes, and asked 100 Ipswich Town supporters what position on the pitch they would most likely fill in the January transfer window. Would you imagine you'd probably get a for centre half? What would have been the top 3, and in what order do you think? And has that sort of therefore shrouded and sort of given us the scores that we're getting this evening?
I personally felt the number one requirement was a central midfielder. I thought that when you looked, Cameron Humphreys obviously wasn't really a part of that. Marcelino Nunes was moving into the 10 role. We only had 3 there: Azul Matasiwa, Jens Hughes and Jack Taylor. And it felt that if anything happened to Azul Matasiwa, it was disaster zone. And I don't think it's the same up front, because whilst Hurst, Azon, Akpom, none of them have grabbed the shirt and made it their own as yet, I think there's enough there to get by with, where in midfield we're one injury away from disaster, really, in my view. So I'd have put that as number 1. I personally would have it would have been hard for me to split number 9 and number 10 next, because in Szmodics and Akpom, I don't think they were right for the role, and we were heavily reliant on Marcelino Nunes, who is injured, and we needed someone else in there. And I feel Mehmeti's a real smart pick up there. I thought he was really good on Saturday there. So it would have been that for me, yeah, and 9. But they're the 3 that we wanted. We managed to get 2 and failed to get 1. But I think the timing of it matters. Had this been deadline down, we managed to pick up Dan Neil and Anis Mehmeti today, and no strike. I think everyone would have been pretty happy, because that would have been 2 big targets landed. Because those 2 are in, they're almost forgotten about, aren't they? So you sort of pass those. So now all focus goes onto one role, and that one role was a number 9. And I sort of mentioned on the pod last night, it did feel like we'd run out of time, run out of targets. We didn't really know where we were. I'd say the first link of the day came out as Richard Kone. That was sort of soon poo-pooed, because he's already played for 2 clubs this season. But from what I gather, there's a bit of interest in Hegbo from West Brom, Adjumang from Derby, all these players. But these are players that we maybe could have got in the summer, but we didn't. And so I feel it's the summer's business that's really hurt us in this window, rather than if you're talking about the number 9 role. I think that's where the mistake was made, because signing a striker in this window is always going to be incredibly difficult. And you look around, and I can't see any championship deals that have happened where I think, oh, I'd have liked that striker. Like Coventry didn't sign a striker, Middlesbrough didn't sign a striker, Hull didn't sign a striker, Millwall didn't sign a striker. I don't see, like Southampton tried to get one at the end, but didn't get one. So I don't see who these championship strikers that were available that moved were effectively. And yeah, we could have overpaid for one, but is that the right move? I think there was interest in also. But
then, sorry, Joe, just to interrupt there, you say that those other clubs didn't sign strikers either. But then is that not the job of Mick Court and his department to find strikers that maybe these other clubs aren't looking? We can't all be looking in the same place for the same strikers, because it isn't going to work, is it? So is that where we have to pull in this expertise to drag in names that maybe a Matasiwa equivalent that you haven't seen rumoured elsewhere?
I just don't. I don't see that we could have bought someone in from a foreign market for this stage of the season now. I think that there was talk, I think we like talk as Prisk, who Birmingham signed, but they're paying him silly money and he's probably more one for next season than this. But when we don't know what division you're going to be in next season, do you want to put all your eggs in that basket? And once Dan Neil had signed, that was our last loan spot gone. So where were we going to get this permanent deal done for a striker in the last 2 days of the window? Unless you're, let's say, chucking some money at, I don't know who, somewhat like there's talk, I think someone put Josh Madger on Twitter, but just breaking from TWTD, Sam Szmodics is closing in on a Derby move. They've made a late move. They've made a late move for him.
Yeah, well, we'll have a chat about that in a second and the potential ramifications therein. But again, yeah, thank you very much to everyone who's joining in the chat. I've just been popping up some more scores in there. What we sort of found towards the end of the transfer window before it got to deadline, which was in theory 7 o'clock, but to Joe's point there about breaking news still happening, the deal sheet, we're sort of mimicking the Premier League now, whereby as long as you've got all the details of the deal written on a sheet at a particular time and it's been sent over to someone within the powers that be before 7 o'clock, then the rest of it can be ironed out, I believe, as far as I'm aware, between now and 9 o'clock, I think it is. So we may get some more concrete news between now and the end of the pod, depending on how long we go. Stuart Watson in the East Anglian Daily Times mentioned that, and I shall quote Stuart's words here. It's understood that the scouting team, led by the new head of recruitment, Mick Court, who I referenced earlier, put several possible targets to Kieran McKenna, but that the Blues boss opted not to pursue many. Now, you can look at that two ways, I suppose. You could say that there were a number of names put to Kieran McKenna and he didn't fancy any of them. But why was that? Is it because they're not couldn't? What I'm trying to get at is that were those names not of a suitable standard for Kieran McKenna, and therefore is the failing just the pool that we are looking in, or is the failing the recruitment side of things, not being able to find those players?
Yeah, I guess you can't find what's not there, though, can you? So if it's a case of you're putting players forward which are sort of heavily caveated, he can do this, he can do that. But it sounds like the players we have been interested in have been Patrick Bamford, who elected to stay at Sheffield United. And I think his wife is pregnant. They live up in the area. So it was a tough time to make that move. And he signed a new contract there, subsequently scored against us and played well before getting sent off. Callum Wilson, who looked like he was on his way out of West Ham, but he scored a goal. So West Ham decided to keep him. And obviously it's very far from the fact that we could have got that deal done had we wanted to anyway. I think we liked Joel Peru. He's decided to stay at Leeds. Sam Surridge was another one that was sort of not poo-pooed by the sort of local press, probably with a sort of nod from the club. And it sounds like someone put on Twitter who's been reliable that we sort of had the price agreed, but they've basically doubled his wages because they wanted to stay for another year. So you lose out on that one. And maybe someone like Willa Sula, who was always a very, very unrealistic signing, but one that you maybe thought might fall to you on the last day of the season because he's their fourth choice striker. Last day of the window, he's fourth choice striker, but it hasn't. So I think it's just everything feels to have come together a little bit at the moment and not worked out for us.
We've found ourselves a few times in the realms of unrealistic signings and maybe looking for unicorns which potentially aren't there. Just maybe to contradict what was fed, I'm going to say, to Stuart Watson in the EADT from the club. There was a tweet, a couple of tweets actually. One from Dan Marsh, who writes EFL features for the Mirror, who used to work for the South London Press and is a Millwall fan. So let's work on the assumption that he's pretty well connected down in South London. He has reported that Millwall turned down multiple bids from Ipswich Town for Femi Aziz. Now, I don't know a lot about Femi Aziz, but I do know he's not a bustling, strapping centre forward. And they were today, numerous offers today, including an offer which would have amounted to a club record sale. Now, Joe can let us know A, what Millwall's club record sale is. He can let us know, B, what he has heard in regards to potentially what the offer was to Millwall. And then, probably most importantly, Joe's going to explain why we are after a fourth right winger.
Yeah, well, I think Millwall's club record is Romain Esse, who was, I think, about £14 million. And from what I gather, the deal for Aziz was up to 18 million quid. So I don't know if that's a whole package, what parts of that there. So you're talking about 18 million quid for a right winger when we spent 17.5 million on Sindre Valla-Egle in the summer. We spent 12 million pounds on Casey McAteer in the summer. We spent 8 million pounds on Chio Ogbene last summer and had him in the squad and decided to send him out on loan. But luckily we spent 60,000 pounds on Wes Burns from Fleetwood, and he has been the best signing of almost one of the best signings of Ipswich Town's history. I'd say personally for what he's done. But I find it incredible, really, that we're not seeing Casey McAteer get an opportunity, and it must be because he's not doing enough behind the scenes. Because when I see him come in, he looks the most obvious fit to replace Wes Burns, but we seem to be going with Sindre Valla-Egle. It was I thought Valla-Egle really struggled at Sheffield United. I think he's hit a little bit of a wall. He's a young boy in a new country, never probably played over Christmas break before, and he's finding it difficult. Like I said, we go to Portsmouth tomorrow. That's another game where I'd expect McAteer to come into the team, because I don't probably see Wes Burns playing Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So I just wonder what is going on there, because that's a lot of money. 12. I know he's like Kieran McKenna spoke glowingly about him in his press conference on Friday, but that was because he was asked what is happening with Casey McAteer because he's barely playing. So that wasn't unrequited. That was a response to a question, and he's always going to defend his players and say how well he's doing and what he's learning and his attributes. But I think his main point was that he's a young player, and we expect him to be, over time, getting better for us. He's got all the sort of the things you can't teach, being 6 foot, 6'1" tall, being good in the air, being sort of lightning fast, but he hasn't maybe got the rest of his game to the point where we need it to be. But we're going to need to see him step up over the next few weeks. But it's incredible, like I say, to think we've spent best part of 40 million on right wingers across the last year, and we were willing to spend potentially up to another sort of 18 million quid on one.
Well, that's going to be my point, is if you're spending, looking, arguably, if Millwall had accepted the offer, or if Millwall had got the player that they needed to get in to allow them to release Aziz, it's 55 million pounds we would have spent on one position in the team, and one position in the team that it doesn't, to my eyes, look like it needs much work done to it.
I wonder whether he was just seen as maybe like Amari Hutchinson, where longer term he'd come in because he left-footed, come in the inside and players. So in the last promotion season, where Amari could play on the wing, but he could also come in and be the 10 and be the link player between midfield and forwards. But is he even someone that you'd expect to get Premier League interest next year?
It just seems a crazy thing to do, and a situation to find yourself in when it's arguably not the most obvious position in the team that you're looking to fill. Streaky's got some opinions here. Hey, Streaky, how you going? In regards to McAteer, saying he should be playing, he'll be fine if given minutes, and saying that he should be given the same minutes that Egle's been given. But then, to Joe's point, it's the manager that's not giving him the minutes. And as you were pointing out in last night's flagship, Joe, he's just not getting the minutes, is he? He's just not getting any time on the pitch, very little time from the bench, certainly not starting many matches at all. He's falling further down the pecking order, and you would have thought that with the potential signing of Aziz, he'd have been even further down the pecking order. Yeah.
And he couldn't go. It's almost like one we'd expect him to go out on loan, but he can't because he's played for Leicester this season. So it'd been mad. Like I said, it'd been very, very interesting to see. Like I say, I wonder whether Aziz was seen more as a 10, someone to play inside. And there, we've just signed Mehmeti to help out there, but maybe Nunez or Philogene injuries are worse and are being let on by the club at the moment.
Fantastic. Joe, I did say at the very beginning, you're the one here to inject positivity into the fan base.
Well, let's talk about Frankie Runham and Ryan Doherty.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, let's talk about some signings. So you've got no disrespect to those two youngsters. I'm sure they'll do spectacularly well. Question here from Neil. Does Joe know our PSR if we fail this season, I think we're okay, aren't we? Headroom wise, well, if we're bidding £18 million for Femi Aziz, there's got to be some confidence that we're okay in that respect, Joe.
Yeah, it's very difficult to tell when you're bouncing between the divisions what your PSR position is like. But yeah, if we're putting a big run of those sort of bids in, then we must have the money there for it.
Question, a point here from Steve. Keep an eye on Makama at Norwich. Well, I don't think you're telling us anything we didn't know already, Steve, unless you're suggesting that the deal sheet is in for him and we're looking to break the news live on Blue Monday in the next 39 minutes. They seem to have struck gold yet again there, don't they, Joe? And this Sargent isn't, he doesn't need to leave today, does he, to get over to Canada?
No, I think the MLS window runs a lot longer.
Yeah. And just to the point we were talking about earlier about other signings, and you mentioned it yourself, Joe, that it's now, since the sort of deadline, the official deadline at 7:00 shut, there's been further press on Twitter and social media suggesting that, as you said, that we did make moves for Perot. We did try and make a decent offer to Sam Surridge, which was countered by his existing MLS club, and according to reports, we couldn't match or did not want to match or rival that, which is a bit of a disappointment, but there we are. BD ITFC, has there been confirmation of no more ins? There hasn't been confirmation, but we're working on the assumption that we probably would have heard by now that, as we're sort of hearing about Sammy Szmodics.
Yeah, both TWT and EADT have said that the deal sheet is in for Sammy Szmodics. So you'd imagine if there was another deal sheet the other way, we'd know about it. Yeah,
and it's starting to come in now. Thanks, guys, for pointing that out. And as Trevor suggests here, I don't know how much you've got in your savings, Trevor, and I am not suggesting for 1 minute. Please gamble responsibly, but Sod's law may well dictate. That was quite an interesting one, actually. Earlier, Joe, there was rumours that he was there. He was up in Derby. He had his medical over the weekend. Obviously, he wasn't even in the squad on Saturday. What did you think? I know you've been quite, and you were talking about yesterday on the flagship in regards to we don't require him, but now we find ourselves, should that deal go through, we find ourselves with a space in the squad. We've got 24 out of 25 positions in the squad used up, and without the one remaining position in the squad that we needed filled, and we're letting arguably a striker go.
Yeah, but he's not a striker for us, though, is he? He's never going to be able to play that 9 role, linking up play, dropping in, playing back to goal, and doing there. And I do just feel like it's good business if we can lose him now, because he doesn't really fit in our team. And it hasn't worked for him here, really, since we've come back down to this level. But I do rate him as a player, and I think I would say, I think that you'd almost be tempted just to keep him. But I think sometimes if you've got a good deal sat in front of you, then you've just got to do it sometimes, don't you? That's not going to be the difference between us going up and not going up for me.
A couple of points here, actually. Tammy's suggesting it's a loan, and then Gary's also suggested it's a loan deal to Derby, which
I think TWTD is saying loan, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. In that case, as I said earlier about the Sod's law and the gambling, you don't need to worry about gambling and losing your life savings on Sammy Szmodics scoring, because a bit like tomorrow night when we all head off down to Fratton Park, Connor Chapman won't be scoring against us, and Sammy Szmodics won't be scoring against us either. Just a question here. Sorry, Neil has put in, who becomes our 25th player, Townsend or a free agent? What's the situation, Joe? I don't think we know really about Townsend's situation and his injury and recovery thereof. But in regards to a free agent, should we find a free agent that no one else has thought of or realised is a free agent? What do you know the rules in regards to that, and when we can fill that? Does it have to be tonight that we fill that?
No. As long as the player is a free agent now, then you can register them. I think it's up till like middle of March, almost like the old transfer deadline day. But the key thing is they have to be a free agent at the close of the window. So a club can't release, oh, we've got 26 players, we'll release someone tomorrow. It's too late then. They have to be released today. So I think, for example, like Brandon Williams was released by Hull today. That's so he can be a free agent, be registered past the deadline. And I think this is what happened when we signed, I think we used this when we signed Axel Tuanzebe last year. There was talk about getting a deal done before the deadline, but then it was just a little bit of a, well, there's no point rushing it through. We'll get it done in time. And I think it happened 7 or 8 days after the actual window shut. But yeah, so I think someone's putting their Divock Origi as a free agent. So we'll see. Maybe there is someone out there that could be the answer, or
Raheem Sterling might take a pay cut from £350,000 a week to
stranger things have happened.
Portman Road. Joe said that Raheem Sterling's going to sign everyone. Did you hear that? Question here from Amanda: can't we register one of our under 21s? We don't need to register the under 21s, do we, Joe?
Yeah, I think the only two that you would need to register to play is Frankie Runham, who it was announced signed on loan from Chelsea, but that's purely for the sort of under 21 squad. And we've got Luca Fletcher, who's actually on loan from Man City in the under 21 squad. Neither of those would be able to play for the first team because all championship loans have to be registered regardless of their age. It's a different rule to League One and League Two, but in the Championship, any loanees need to be registered in order to play. So those are the two players that, if they were expected to get anywhere near the first team, you would register one of those. But I don't see that will be happening.
And when does that registration have to be done by? It has to be done by tonight, is it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the club's probably more likely just to leave that space open on the off chance that either Connor Townsend becomes fit again, or I suppose we need to make that decision tonight anyway, don't we? If we're registering him. Okay, well then maybe we'll leave it. Maybe we'll leave it empty. Could we have? I'm not suggesting we should have. Could we have recalled Ali Al Hamidi if things had got that desperate? I suppose it would depend on the terms of his. From
what I remember about that one, there's an agreed fee at the end of that, isn't there? So I think it'd probably been expensive for us to get out of that deal, and we probably don't want to get out of that deal because I think we're quite happy for him to leave. We've been happy for him to leave for a while, so I think it's £3 million if he goes to Luton for the end of the season. I don't know if that's only if they go up or not.
A decent chunk of change, if so. Terry's pointed out here that there was a Greaves to Birmingham rumour. I can't say I saw that one myself, Terry. Anything in it? I said not that I heard, Joe. Maybe there was, and that's the reason why there was all of a sudden a somewhat bizarre link to, was it Egan yesterday from Hull?
Yes, someone did mention that Greaves to Birmingham, but I think it's just Birmingham wanted a tall left-footed defender, so I'd imagine.
And obviously didn't see him play in the first game of the season.
Just had an ask about everyone, and like I say, we spent over, I think, £15 million on Jacob Greaves, and it's probably not the right time to sell him now.
Yeah. Devil's advocate, Joe. I said earlier about timescales, etc. And this is just me with my whatever a devil's advocate hat looks like. I'm now putting it on. We knew this time last year, we knew that Delap was going. We knew this time last year that there's a fair chance that we knew what division we were going to be in come 2005, 2006. We had all summer and ended up having to revisit a move for a striker who we'd already decided against buying, potentially for fitness issues. And as you said, the summer business dealings have failed us now, the knock-on effect. We won't know the full knock-on effect until May the 2nd, I believe it is, the last game of the season, or May the 3rd. Could we have done more in August is what I'm trying to get to. And not even August, because we knew in February, March last year that there's a chance we were going down. Delap was definitely leaving. We needed more support for Hurst, if not better than Hurst. Why is that blind spot there for us?
I don't know. And I think that we felt that George Hurst was going to be the main man at this level. So we were just needing to find players to support him. And maybe in hindsight, that looks like that isn't correct. George Hurst hasn't hit the forms and hasn't hit the heights we've needed him to. But I think it's more. I think there's a lot of focus on the number 9. But if you look at, and I'm just plucking these numbers out my head, so they're probably not all correct. But if you look at the Championship season when we got promoted last season, Nathan Broadhead was playing in that left 10 role, scored 13 goals. Connor Chaplin was playing in the central 10 role, scored 13 goals. Wes Burns and Amari Hudson were playing the right wing in the 10 role, scored, I think Burns scored like 5 or 6 goals. Amari scored 10 goals. George Hurst and Kiefer Moore up front scored maybe 12, 13 goals between them. So I think Hurst and Azon have got, 8 league goals between them so far. So yeah, they're probably a couple short of where they need to be. Maybe 3 or 4 short where they need to be. But I think it's around that we're lucky that our left winger has scored 20 goals between them, whether that be Jack Clark or Jaden Philogene. But we haven't had any goals. I think, Wes Burns scored 1 goal from that right-hand side. Sindre Valegli scored 2. So we've got 3 from that right winger role. And from the central 10 role, I think Nunes has scored, 3 goals, has he? Or 2 goals, 3 goals. So we do need some goals from elsewhere in the team as well, because it's the number 9 is probably seen as the biggest issue, because I think that's where the attention is drawn to, isn't it? They're the ones, and between Hurst and Azon, they have missed like 27 good big chances this season. But I say Hurst is getting more of the stick. He scored 6 goals and missed 15 big chances. Azon scored 2 goals and missed 12 or 13 big chances. So that is where the issue is. But for me, there's also an issue that we're not contributing from over the team. You look at, like, Jack Taylor scored 1 goal where he poked it home on the line. Jens Kiyusa scored 1 goal where the goalie passed him at Leicester. Azor Matassi was not scored. I don't think he probably will score for us all season. So you're looking at, like, when you look at the Championship season, Sam Morsey chipped in with 4 or 5 goals. Massimo Luongo chipped in with 4 or 5 goals. Jack Taylor scored a few more goals even when he was coming on there. So I think it's definitely an element of needing a bit more from around the team, from all the midfield players. Maybe not Matasiwa, but Matasiwa's partner is given a lot more license to get forward than Massimo Luongo was. And Massimo Luongo was happy to pop up the goals. Sort of some big goals as well for us, big equaliser against Middlesbrough, a big winner against Blackburn. So I think there's definitely an element for me that we need to make sure that everyone else is scoring goals, not just focus too much on the 9.
Well, yeah. Well, I suppose you're reliant at the moment that your left wing is going to score, whoever it happens to be, between them are going to score another 20 goals between now and the end of the season. It's putting a bit of pressure on that one particular position. Jason's suggesting here, could we have done more in the summer? We signed Azon, but I think what we're trying to get out there, Jason, is the fact that we needed another body, and we probably needed another body for at least 2 seasons, and if not 3 seasons, and have managed to cobble something together, whether it be a combination of Al Hamidi, Ladapo, coming good with Delap, although we were still trying to sign Breuer up to the last knockings of the Premier League transfer window in the summer, if I remember rightly. So we hadn't, we were still after our number 9, if you like, and only transpired that we didn't need them so much because Liam Delap took it upon himself to score a lot of goals in the first half of the season at least. But we just always seemed to be just that one body short in that area.
And it's funny, like on that last transfer window, the summer transfer window in the Premier League, all the talk was we need a number 9. We chased Breuer right up until the end, and then all of a sudden it was Reece Nelson that we nearly signed, and today it was Femi Aziz apparently. So it's almost like the same things happened. We need a 9. We need a 9. We need a 9. And then at the end it's like, oh, we've got to try and sign another winger, and we were unsuccessful both times.
And people suggest it hasn't been scattergun today. What Angus is saying here, Hurst, Azon, Akpom, 8 goals between a lot of them, not good enough. Al Hamidi, 0 goals, although he's been injured for a lot of it, hasn't he, Angus? But yeah, get your drift. He's suggesting we need 2 replacements for Delap, and I think that may well be the case of sort of what we were.
Well, maybe Azon and Akpom are the 2 replacements, if that makes sense. And they have got 10 goals between them, not 8, but.
But was Akpom wasn't signed as that player, though, was he? Because he wasn't played in that position until such time as we needed to play him in that position.
But do we find a better 9 than Chuba Akpom out in the market today? I think that's a difficult one. Maybe there's a couple of people in Telegram. I think Kevin, they're saying the same. Like if it was his choice, he'd give Akpom a run of games up front, because whilst he might not hustle and bustle as much as Hurst and Azon, I think if you're going to give him chances, he's more reliable in front of goal, isn't he? He's going to be the one that scores your goal. So you might lose a little bit of your build-up play, but actually sticking the ball in the back of the net, I think Chuba Akpom's got a much better track record for doing that at all levels, whether that be in the French league, in the Dutch league, in the Championship before. He has been a sort of a heavy goal scorer where neither of the other two have ever scored goals at a good rate.
Yeah, that's right. If the ball's being crossed to your centre forward on the penalty spot like it was against Preston at the weekend, who would you rather be side-footing or attempting to side-foot it home? It probably would be Chuba Akpom. But, is that down to McKenna to start hanging his hat on someone at least and giving them a run of games in the team? Because I appreciate they're not, and again, my devil's advocate hat is on. I appreciate it's not easy when they're not scoring and maybe not playing particularly well, and therefore you feel the need to have to chop and change and bring people in and try someone new. Do you get to the point whereby you say, well, look, hang on, let's actually give someone a run of games. Let's get them, see if they can play themselves into some sort of form, because they're not going to by playing one week, not playing the next, coming on for 10 minutes at the end of the game and then starting the next game and coming off after 60.
Yeah, I'd say so. But the problem is, I think we've tried to do that in that Azon's Akpom started that game, then he's injured, so he misses those. And then Azon does well against Bristol City. We give Hurst another game to try and get there. He struggles. So Azon gets another start at the weekend. He goes off injured or ill at half time. So who do you then start in the game tomorrow? If Azon was unable to continue a game 48 hours ago, I don't think he's going to be ready to start this game. So it's probably going to be George Hurst again, isn't it? But
then to coin Mullet's phrase, George Hurst is made of crisps. He's not going to be. Is he going to be available week in, week out for the next 4 months of the season? You said before Akpom's already been injured this season, and as far as aware, Azon had a headache, but we then heard a rumor that it may well be a hamstring. Don't know if your cerebral cortex is linked somehow to the back of your leg, but it may be a smokescreen that there's something more serious there. So you're potentially going into you're stuck with all due respect, stuck with what you've got, and none of the three have shown themselves to be particularly robust either. BD's saying here that not only is the number 9 failed to score, it's the hold-up play for those others to score, and I think that's a fair point, isn't it? Is that maybe Azon has showed certainly the last couple of games. I thought he played okay on Saturday as well. In the half that he played, the last 2 home games, his hold-up play has been superior to George Hurst's recently. But that's also something that if Akpom can play in the right position and stay in the right position, then his touch and hold-up play is equally as good, isn't it?
Yeah, but then also in the second half against Preston, that's where that last sort of 20, 25 minutes, we created a lot of chances. We pushed on, and George Hurst played well in that, other than the scuff shot. So we got more out of the game when Hurst was on the pitch as opposed to Azon. So I think it's just where let's say when Nunes isn't playing, I think we really miss someone there. And I thought that the early signs are Anis Mehmeti looks a really good addition in that 10 role. So hopefully he can recreate what Nunes has done and build relationships there. Like I say, he made that brilliant run, which headed the ball down for sort of Azon to have an empty net, but the linesman made a really poor decision with the offside flag. So like I say, there are some positives. I think there's a little bit of a doom loop amongst the fan base at the moment, and I've sort of not gone on socials, but it sounds like that's a bit of a shit show, to be fair. So I've not had a proper look on there, but like I say, it just boils down to us really needing a result tomorrow, doesn't it?
Well, I was going to say, if you think it's a shit show at the moment, wait until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. If we don't happen to put Pompey to the sword. If there's any questions you want to ask, guys and girls in the chat, please do so. I'll get Joe's thoughts on maybe what the our current promotion rivals have done in the transfer window, and then just give yourselves a chance to think of anything you want to quiz Joe about. There's been plenty of comments which I've been pushing up on the screen. Thank you very, very much for that. I think people are sort of in the same ballpark in terms of comments and feelings at the moment. Joe suggesting here to go with Akpom or Azon and rest Hurst for the time being. There's been a lot of suggestions there. It's just too much rotation. What Michael's saying here is we stop rotating the defenders. Maybe we should do the same with the striker. Aldersbrook Blue looks like Martin to me. We're creating chances with Hurst and Azon at 9 with the work they put in. He's suggesting that Akpom doesn't contribute enough work, which could easily result in fewer chances. So it's the conundrum. It's the situation we find ourselves in. As you and I and speaking to Dave about our Venn diagram of strikers, we're talking about the central midfield Venn diagram, having signed Dan Neil from Sunderland. We're sort of between the 4 central midfielders, we're sort of covering all of our bases now. So the Venn diagram is a lot of interconnecting circles. Should we go with that, Joe? You've got an A-level you got a degree in maths, haven't you? But we're not quite there with regards to our choices with regards to centre forwards. They all seem the circles seem a little bit more disparate.
Yes, yeah, and I think that has been the problem, hasn't it? And when you're looking at the signings for this window, it's with the squad in the position it's in. It's they're really difficult deals to do. So I think there probably needs to be an element of focus on the positivity of the 2 deals we have done. Dan Neil, excellent signing. Anis Mehmeti, excellent signing at a great price. It's almost like a can't lose deal because we go up. If he's not good enough, you can probably sell him on for more than you paid him. If you stay down, he's going to be a good signing for next year. So I think they're players that have ticked all the boxes we need to. They're overlapping circles in their Venn diagram have hit what they need to be. Do they improve us now? Are they good deals? Do they kill us for the future? And I think they all end up in the right part of that Venn diagram.
A couple of questions we had earlier on. Eddie is asking, do we think McKenna will have felt left down by the head of recruitment? As I said earlier, it's difficult to know whether was it just not the volume of players provided or not the quality of players provided. But it just seems it doesn't matter who our head of recruitment is, Joe, does it? They just say earlier that blind spot needs to be there. Seems to still be there.
Yeah, you hear, like, I know that's obviously come out of the club today, but I've heard previously that Kieran McKenna is very sort of cautious with the business as well, that it takes a real lot for him to agree to go for the targets, and so he's very sort of careful with what he does there. I think they have to sort of be seen as a slam dunk for him to sort of say yes to it. But like I say, we don't know how the dynamics are behind the scenes between Mark Ashton, Luke Wareham, Mick Court, Kieran McKenna, the other guys in the recruitment team. You'd hope they're all on the same page with all of this. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be frustrations from all parties, frustrations that targets haven't been looked at, frustrations that the targets might not be seen as good enough, frustrations that when those 2 things have aligned, Mark Ashton or Luke Wareham haven't been able to get the deals done at prices and costs that are seen as worthwhile for the long-term future of the football club. So there's always going to be frustrations in any high-performing environment, and that's what it is there. So as long as they're not sort of at each other's throats and there's all that going on, I don't think it's an issue. It's just what any sort of business needs to be successful, isn't it?
It's what they've signed up to. It's what they know they know the score, they know their environment. Everyone's working and everyone's in exactly the same boat. I was just going to say, I'm going to play a quick word from our sponsors and allow Joe to have a glug of his squash because he's been talking an awful lot. We'll be back in a second.
Blue Monday is brought to you in partnership with Atwell Solicitors, your ideal legal partner for property and business law. Whether you're buying a home, starting a business, or just need legal guidance, our dedicated team has got you covered. Trust our award-winning customer service team to handle your legal matters with care and expertise. Find out more at atwells.com or visit us at our offices in Ipswich, Colchester, London, and our new location in Woodbridge.
Suitably refreshed. Quote a comment here from Steve asking whether we should be trying. We're talking a lot about Egerle this evening. Try him as a 9. He can play anywhere up front. Give him a chance. What do we have to lose? Well, a place in the Premier League is what we have to lose, Steve. But do you foresee a situation, Joe, between now and the end of the season that we find ourselves in a position whereby we have to try Egerle up front? Is it somewhere he's played before? Do we know?
He's played up front when he's played for sort of the Norway under-21s team. So it's obviously a role he can do. But I said the fact we were looking at another right winger, and it just doesn't strike me as an actual winger. Like he always likes to come back inside, and yeah, he can put good balls over. But I think he needs to be more central. He needs to be between the sort of whips of the goalpost a bit more. So yeah, try him as a 10, try him as a 9, try and work something a bit different there. We've got a good enough squad. We've got good enough players. It's just a case of tweaking a few things, stumbling across a few things. We stumbled across Marcelino Nunez in a 10, and he's been probably our player of the season in that regard, maybe up there with Azor Matasiwa. So I'm not against things like that happening.
I'm not happy with stumbling across things, to be honest. And the elephant in the room here, Mike is suggesting, is McKenna's making some poor decisions. Look up the word hubris, Mike suggests. Will be a heavy pitch tomorrow, Streaky suggests. Not more rain, Streaky. You're sure it's not going to get called off? Who's more suited? He suggests that George Hurst is more suited in the number 9 position on a heavy pitch. Yeah, very possibly. And here's something that I was thinking about earlier, Michael, if you're still around. Should we have kept Kiefer Moore? We'd have done an awful lot worse than done that. But, Joe, was it ever, could we have ever matched the contract he was going to be given at Wrexham?
It was a contract at Sheffield United we'd have needed to match, though, wasn't it, previously? So he went to Sheffield United first. So I think we could have got that done. But I think the problem was that deal got done very early in the summer when we probably didn't want to commit to it. And then by the end of the window, I'm sure if that deal was still available at the end of the window, we might have pulled the trigger on it. But it was gone, and we sort of progressed with Ali Al-Hamidi as our third choice striker in the Premier League, despite having seen for the previous 5 months that Kiefer Moore was a long way ahead of him as a player for us.
Now, I'm going to put this on the screen. I won't read it out, but you know what, Neil? He would be perfect for us. There are very few circumstances where he wouldn't be perfect for us. Martin's suggesting here, in the absence of a new striker, can we all agree to support the ones that we have? There are 3 to 4 months left of this season, plenty of time to fire us to promotion along similar lines. Luke is suggesting here that George Hurst is going to score a brace tomorrow night. He'll be so cheesed off with Saturday's performance and all of us asking for a new striker. Silencing the critics. Yeah, positive thoughts, Luke. Nothing wrong with that, mate. Question for you here, Joe. Oh, actually, Kevin Wilson. I don't know what boy about town. He wasn't really he was certainly more of a fox in the box poacher. Although he did have a fantastic moustache, boy about town. But it's not, unfortunately not the way that we currently play. Joe, something about what we're going to do. Here it is here. Martin's asking, what should we do with that 25th squad place?
I'd leave it free personally, because I think I remember a couple of teams. I think maybe Oxford had done this, where I think Connor Townsend would be able to be registered later in the season if we needed him to. I think we would be allowed to, so we could leave it free, and then if we sign a free agent, give it to them, and if not, if Connor Townsend is fit towards the end of the season, give the place to him. So that's what I'd do.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I think we are out of questions. Well done to Joe and I for getting almost 50 minutes out of 0 signings on transfer deadline day. Has there been any confirmation further about Sammy Szmodics? Anyone in the chat? I should just ask, and if someone could just give us a nod or not. So, in regards to that, Joe, let's have a quick chat about Sammy Szmodics then before we go. Let's work on the assumption that the deal sheet's in and that deal will be completed at some point in the next 11 minutes or so. What are your views on Sammy Szmodics as a whole in terms of his career, short-lived as it was at Ipswich Town? He was the right player at the right time in the Premier League, the wrong player at the wrong time in the Championship.
Yeah, and I think he was very good. I think one of our, probably alongside Liam Delap and Amari Hudson, he was our best attacker in the Premier League sadly from August until, was it January the 2nd, that Fulham game, January the 3rd, or was it December the 29th? It was right over that Christmas break, wasn't it? I think maybe the 3rd of January, and I thought he'd, I'd say, four Premier League goals, 4 away goals, 4 goals that gave us a 1-0 lead away from home, and worked himself really well. We sort of played that sort of three across the front with him, Hutchinson and Delap, and I thought he was excellent. So yeah, but that injury, he had that injury, and then he came back for the Coventry game in the FA Cup fourth round and broke down quite early on. Played about sort of 20 minutes and went straight off, and then came back and played a minute at Old Trafford. Then played a dozen minutes or so on the last day of the season against West Ham. Looked really, really sharp in pre-season. Him and George Hurst up front, but he just couldn't get that goal early for us. And then he had an injury, missed quite a number of games, and he had a bad illness. And I think one of those ones that it just hasn't worked. And I think when you've got a 30-year-old player who has got that sort of injury record over this year, I think if you can move them on, I think you do so. That would be my view on it. Sometimes you need to move on players a little bit early to ensure you get a good deal for them. And I think it might be a case that, in reality, you'd want to keep him for another year and a half or a year, 18 months, that sort of range. But if you do so, his value will be zero at that point. And is that the right thing to do when you can pick up a few million quid now? Ultimately, it's real money that is being spent. It's not a simulation. So I think it makes sense. That I don't see. He turns 31 in September. So even this time next year, you're 31. If he hasn't managed to fight off this injury record, it's going to be a real sort of millstone around your neck on a good contract that he was given in the Premier League. If he can go and get something elsewhere, I know they're saying it's a loan now, but I'd imagine that's a loan with an obligation in there, or it's just we just need to get this done to get the deal over the line ahead of 9 o'clock. But I'd imagine if Sam Szmodics leaves now, he won't be coming back to Ipswich.
A bit like Connor Chaplin potentially. As Streaky says here, he gave us that wonderful 4 minutes at Manchester City. He certainly did. Crikey, remember that? We were going to win the league back then. So yes, thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Michael, we take it fully on board. It is indeed our fault we didn't sign a number 9. Apologies for that. What we would have given to have spent the last 52 minutes talking about our brand new bustling centre forward. And if I remember rightly, Benjamin Bloom, esteemed Championship podcaster and host of the flagship show, pretty much guaranteed that it would happen today, and it hasn't. So please do take that up with Ben. Thank you very much, Nigel, for your comment. Thank you very much, Martin. Yes, we've certainly strung it out as much as we possibly could.
We haven't even got onto Ryan Doherty yet, Craig.
Oh no, okay. Well, maybe that'll have to go onto top tier. Keep a lookout for that. Yes, later this week. What we at? Tuesday, aren't we? So I think if I remember rightly, there's a top tier pre-match with Rich and Seb for those subscribers tomorrow. But tomorrow evening, Ben, Dave, Seb are all around, aren't they? I think for post-match. You and I are heading off down to Fratton Park tomorrow. Joe, you're down your old university stomping ground or nearby. So yeah, good luck and safe travels to all those of us who are heading down there tomorrow night. Then there will be pre-match for Derby County on Thursday with Rich and Seb at 8 o'clock. And then the normal top tier stuff on Friday, and back to flagship again, I suppose. Derby Sunday night. I'm not around. I'm not going to Derby at the weekend. Jay, do you want to know here's a question for you. Which ex-Ipswich Town central defender am I going to watch sit on the bench on Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m. kickoff, 2 p.m. local time maybe?
Oh, local time. So you're in a different country. I've got no idea.
I'm off to watch Lecce play
Corrie in Darber.
Corrie in Darber. So yes, I shall report back the next time I'm on the pod as to how he looked. I say he's not getting not many minutes. A bit like Casey McAtee is not getting many minutes off the bench for Lecce at the moment, and they're on a bit of a downward spiral. But bizarrely enough, that's where I shall be. So anyway, by the by. So you'll see Joe will be back at the weekend post Derby to talk all things.
6 points.
Yeah, so this the forthcoming 6 point week that we're going to have. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.